We're live.
Right. Yeah. Welcome, everybody.
So I'm still setting my shit up.
Oh, I'm out of frame.
All right, que paso, amigos? This is ACAB Radio, number 9, which stands for All Canadians Are British, except those French Canadians. And we're going to have various topics today. One of those would be the ongoing issues with Kenneth Lopera and the grand jury. And a recent video that came out, which is Metro's latest killing. And that's a woman that had a shovel, but whether they actually had to kill her or not is in dispute.
Did she die, though? I saw, last I checked, she was in, like, serious condition.
She did die last week.
Oh, man.
Son of a...
Yeah.
Wow.
So,
another notch in the belt.
Yeah.
Right? Gets a tattoo now?
Some of them actually do that. Some of the cops actually have that sort of thing.
Tattoos, wasn't it?
Yeah, they have tattoos, and they literally, like, put notches on stuff. And
Are it like teardrops?
no, because they don't shed any tears for people they murder. You know?
That's
Gotcha.
for sure.
Yeah. But yeah, well, first of all, the thing with Lopera, I went to the court, which was supposed to be an update, supposed to be a status hearing where they were going to discuss the grand jury's review of his indictment, which that in itself, normally they use the grand jury to absolve cops. The way they do that is the grand jury is a secretive process. Nobody, like legally, nobody can discuss it. You can actually be put in jail for discussing what goes on in the grand jury without the court's permission. Even the people involved and even the grand jury itself. So even if the grand jury members later see some stuff that isn't brought up during the grand jury and say, well, like, shit, I would have voted for him to be indicted if I knew that, they can't actually say that because they would literally go to jail for it.
Yeah.
And that's the problem, is there's a lot of stuff not brought up during the grand jury when it deals with a cop. And the other thing is they basically put on a defense for the cop. And my personal opinion is, like, the fix is in. And there was an article out. It was actually out.
You talking about the RJ article?
Yeah, I think it was May 10th. So it was actually before the vigil. I just saw it last week. But they were talking about, first of all, how unusual it is to go back and do a grand jury on such a high-profile case.
After he'd already been charged. What were his charges again?
It's involuntary manslaughter, which it was neither involuntary nor manslaughter.
Yeah, it was murder.
It was murder. And oppression under the color of law, which basically means when you're a cop or somebody else who's in a position of authority over people and you abuse your position in order to commit a crime. That's what that charge
Charges.
is.
Yeah.
So they were just talking about how unusual that is, and also the time. And so a year later, things are dragging along, and there's been zero progress. Personally, I think there's been, when you figure in the grand jury, it's been basically, you know, like that one step forward, 2 steps back thing. Like, they're not progressing, they're going backwards.
Yeah, because he was originally charged, and then they decided to do the grand jury indictment, which brings those charges themselves into question. So it's like they could dismiss it completely.
Yeah, well, they explicitly stated during the when they had the first trial that they were going to take it to the grand jury, that the grand jury had the power to drop those charges.
Yeah.
And David Rogers, who used to be the DA and used to protect the cops in that capacity, and then quit the DA's office to go and actually work for the police union, officially protecting cops when they go to trial, was talking about how much they looked forward to it. Which, like I said, I think the fix is in. I think they're actually going to drop the charges. I think there's two different things. First of all, we're in the middle of the election. So Lopera doesn't want that being something that's brought up and used against him. And the other thing is, if they delay it long enough, then people will forget about it.
No, that's already going on, man. Golden Knights, go! Woohoo!
Right.
There we go.
I'm pretty convinced that the Golden Knights jersey is the unofficial uniform of undercover cops, because every time I see an undercover cop, they're wearing one. But so that's the thing is, so the last court date, which was the 24th, they once again delayed it another month.
And that was the third time, I believe, that they delayed
right,
it.
third.
It's the fourth hearing because they've delayed it 3 times.
Yeah.
And then there's some other stuff that happened. Nissa Tzun, who's been on the show a couple times, had come to attend the court, and I saw her when she first walked in, and then I didn't see her after that. And
why was that?
I didn't notice right away. I didn't notice her leave, so I kind of thought that she had just left before I did, because I stayed for some of the other cases. But what happened is they threw her out of court because she was wearing a shirt where her arms were showing. The way she explained it to me is that her tattoos were showing, which I'm not, as far as I know, that's not a court requirement.
Mm-hmm.
I know they do say, like, you have to have basically a t-shirt. So you have to have something with sleeves. So I don't know if that's just her interpretation or what they actually told her. But I know, first of all, those rules are not for anybody in court. Those rules are for people that are appearing in court who are part of a case.
Mm-hmm.
And they're very rarely enforced against people who are just there to observe. And I've had an issue with that where I normally wear shorts because pants are the devil and they fucking uncomfortable as fuck. So
when it's 100 degrees out.
yeah. So unless it's freezing cold, I wear shorts. And sometimes I wear shorts even then. But I've been to court hundreds of times wearing shorts. I've never had any problem. But when Lieutenant Utomi was being charged, or Stephen Stubbs was trying to charge her with perjury for committing perjury when she was proven to have lied in court, I went to that case, and I was in the courtroom. I got up and went to the bathroom, and when I came back, like, they stopped me and they were like, "Oh, you're not allowed in here with shorts."
What shirt were you wearing at the time?
Yeah, I was wearing a Nevada cop block shirt.
So was it the shorts or the shirt? I don't know.
So I think they got together and, like, huddled up and was like, "How can we get rid of this guy?"
Yeah, that's what it seems to me is with the selective enforcement of these policies, they see support, from the community for cases that they don't want people to know about, whether it's Kenneth Lopera or Officer Utomi. They want to get those people out of the courtroom.
Well, any sort of independent news,
yeah,
which we are. I mean, we're independent news, we're press, we report stories, we have a following, so of course you try to suppress things that you don't want out.
Yeah, same with Nissa. She just got the Forced Trajectory Project. They're a media group, so yeah, they don't want that alternate narrative being pushed out, so they try to, whether it's removing you from the courtroom or whatever, it's censorship,
Exactly.
Yeah, well, and another thing happened, which I'm not convinced is was them trying to, like, stop me from reporting. But when I first walked in, they're asking everybody the last names so they could match up to their court cases. And I was like, I'm just here as an observer. And then, she saw my press pass, and she's, who do you work for? And I said, Nevada Cop Blog. And then I said, I'm here for Lopera. And then she put me, like, in the front row, right, which I was a little surprised by. But, like, maybe 5 minutes later, 10 minutes later, she comes up and she's, "Oh, we've got a lot of people here that are, out of custody. And then we have to set up a news camera, too." So, like, it wasn't just me. It was also, there was a Review Journal guy there, but, like, she had us go to the back of the room, which is where I would have expected them to put me in the first place. But like I said, I'm not sure if that was, like, legitimate or if that was, like, actually attempting to, like, make sure I had a shitty seat. So I could see.
Inconvenience.
Yeah. But they do, like I said, I've been in court hundreds of times. The one time I got thrown out of court was when I was there for a case that involved a police officer who lied and got somebody arrested for no reason, and then the police refused to press charges against them, and the judge refused to press charges.
So last Thursday
And
at
then
the Lopera...
Sorry, but then they promoted her to internal affairs, which investigates police misconduct.
Well, yeah, perjurers get promotions.
You want experts
Yeah.
in perjury to...
And has since promoted her to captain and put her in charge of an area command.
Mm-hmm.
There we go.
Well, we've got Joe Lombardo, a known perjurer who is, a sheriff. So
Yeah, and I haven't seen that it came out, but Ramsey has said that he's got some kind of really bad dirt on him that's supposed to come out within the next couple of days.
Well, something to look forward to.
Yeah. So we'll probably be talking about that next week.
So on Thursday, with the Lopera hearing, they pushed it back. What's the next court date? Do you know? Next month, or?
I believe it's June 26th, but I could be off on the day.
Okay.
Yeah.
Well, we'll be keeping you guys updated on what's going on with that, because we're definitely keeping an eye on it. Want to get the community involved, and if these charges do get dismissed, we definitely got to raise some hell, and we need accountability out here, and it's something that we haven't had. I'm born and raised here, so it's something I've had to deal with my whole life out here. Is these cops just running rampant with no sense of accountability at all.
No, they murder with impunity.
Mm-hmm.
Abuse, lie, perjure, harass.
Yeah, and they do it so much that they know they can do it. That's the issue. When you're trying to stop the police from murdering people, letting them know that they can murder somebody and get away with it is not the way to do that.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, it encourages them to abuse people.
Perpetuates the cycle. When you see everybody getting away with worse and worse offenses, what's to stop you? If you're not going to get in trouble.
When you look at it from the other side, it actually makes cops' jobs harder. Because first of all, they're scrutinized on anything because they're not scrutinized by the police for anything. So we have to scrutinize them on everything because, we don't know when the story is going to change 2 days later.
Well, that's for people in the know. I mean, I think for the general population, they get desensitized. So as more and more of these abuse cases come up, no big deal. They kind of start to accept it as the way things are. And they feel defeated or just, apathetic.
But that's one of their complaints always, like, why do you question everything? Well, we question everything because the police don't question anything. Because the people that are supposed to.
Or the local mainstream media out here, they don't question the police narrative. So somebody has to.
Well,
no, they do worse. They tote the police line. That's, they're like a publicity arm for the Metropolitan Police Department here, and it's kind of sick.
When you have internal affairs that's run by somebody who was proven in court to have lied, then you can't have a lot of confidence that they're actually investigating stuff.
Yeah, when they talk about rotten to the core, this is what the police department is. It's, treachery from like deep inside.
But the other thing about that, when you go out and you set yourself as something that's not part of the community, you set yourself as a adversarial person, which is what the police do when they go through poor communities and communities of color. Those communities don't cooperate with you even when you have legitimate crimes, and that also makes the police's jobs harder. If they were actually out there protecting citizens and doing what they're supposed to do, people would actually, like if somebody saw somebody commit an actual crime, they would go up and tell the cops, that they did it. But there's within those poor communities and within communities of color, people don't have that confidence in the police. They have if anything, they have hostility toward the police, so they're not going to help them with anything.
Well, when you have saturation teams, the police come in as an occupying force. There's a police war against the people, and the people are aware of it. We've seen videos from friends of ours from these communities that go out there and they show it. You watch the videos, you see how the police behave. It's really disheartening. How can you trust the pigs? You can't.
And it's a matter of attitude. Like when I see people stopped by the police, my question isn't what did they do. My question is, why is that guy harassing them? And I might be wrong sometimes on that, but that's the atmosphere that the police create with the way they carry out their jobs and the way they oppress people within these communities.
No, even if the police have legitimate reasons to stop somebody, you're right. Their behavior is that they escalate and become violent for something that that they shouldn't do. It's crazy. So even if it's a legit stop, they turn it into something horrible and violent.
Look, our organizations and this podcast wouldn't exist if they wouldn't give us so much to talk about. I mean, it's every week there's a new viral video. Every day there's a new viral video of police going crazy. There's new, police shootings. So, I mean, if this wasn't an issue, we wouldn't exist. Nevada Cop Block wouldn't. There would be no need for it. But here we are. And in regards to saturation teams, I don't see saturation teams in Summerlin or in Henderson.
We actually asked about that during one of the coffee with the cops.
And there was an RJ article. I think it was 2006, so it's been a while. But there was a spokesperson from the LVMPD who explicitly stated, "We would not do this in Summerlin." That was a quote.
There you go.
So, that was a justification. And even if you look at it and you say, okay, we're in a high crime area. What's considered high crime is not 90% of the people out there committing crimes. It's maybe 5%. And so the thing about that is you've got 95% of the people, or whatever the actual percentage is, who, first of all, they're being victimized by the people committing the crime, but then on top of that, they're being harassed by the police based on that.
Yeah. Well, maybe we should say what a saturation team is. I mean, do you want to let everybody know in case you've never heard that term before or how it works?
Yeah, well, the saturation team is a special, I don't know if they consider them a task force, but they're a special group of people. And what they do is they'll target a certain area or a certain neighborhood. And they just descend upon that area, and they will stop anybody for anything they can. One of the things that, jaywalking within a residential neighborhood, which everybody walks across the street in front of their house. Nobody, you're not on a busy street, so you don't have to worry about walking to the end of the street and going to a crosswalk and all that nonsense. So basically they see somebody walking around, or they see somebody on a bicycle that doesn't have a light. And once again, it's within a residential neighborhood, so it's not something that's really a safety issue. It's any excuse they can find to stop somebody. And their intention is they either will get the people to let them search them, which for some reason there's a lot of people that will just let the cops search them even if they know they have something on them, which I think you should turn down. I think you should refuse to be searched just off principle, whether you have something or not. But I guess people think like if they agree, then the cops will cut them a break, but that doesn't happen.
No.
Never.
But so they're looking either that or for people with warrants. We've asked the cops, and the cops will say, well, like, if somebody doesn't belong in that neighborhood, and I'd say, well, how do you determine whether somebody belongs in a neighborhood or not? Because first of all, you have the right to walk down a public street, whether you live there or not, and you have the right to visit your friends who live in that street. You actually have a right to walk through there even if you're not visiting. So
right,
that tells you they're profiling, because how are they determining whether somebody actually belongs in that neighborhood or not?
Well,
right.
Well, if they're homeless, then it's an excuse to target homeless people. What are you doing in this neighborhood?
Well, and they have a right where it's a consensual. I mean, the police can ask anybody at any time, hey, what about this? What about that? And when they do the saturation teams, even if you did nothing, they'll still approach you and start questioning you.
And a lot of people don't realize that they cannot talk to the police. If the police ask you a question, you can tell them, I don't want to answer.
Yeah,
some people don't realize that. Or once again, it's that thing where they think if they cooperate with the police are going to cut them a break. But the police are there explicitly to arrest people with saturation teams. They're usually there in general for that reason. If they're talking to you, they're looking for a reason to arrest you.
Yeah,
right.
What I tell people, the advice I give them is, don't do their job for them. You know what I mean? If they're asking you questions, you can respond, I don't answer questions, or you can ask, am I being detained? Am I free to go? And if you're not being detained, you're not suspected of any crime, then there's no legal obligation to remain there and speak to an officer. So just go about your day.
Right, but I mean, in the communities, they stop everybody. I mean, you're on your way to work, you're on your way to the store, you're taking your kids to school. They're stopping you. It's
Yeah, they stop you, and then you miss your bus, and then you get fired.
Right.
From work. So or you're late to work at least.
And it's to put fear in the community. To let everybody know. We're in control here.
Yeah.
You guys are nothing. You don't have any rights. We'll come in and do what we want. We don't care how we can inconvenience you. And they claim it's for crime. but the amount of people in the community that commit a crime is very small to the amount of people that they stop.
And they're just playing a percentage. They know if they stop enough people, they're going to catch a few people that are actually doing something.
Yeah.
But the problem is, if you stop 50 people and you catch 4 people, then you've inconvenienced 46 people, or you've
who've done nothing,
made them miss their bus so they're an hour late to work or whatever.
It's just not the way you build community or build trust.
They've stopped doing that a long time ago. They have no interest in building community.
Yeah.
No, they're not there to protect and serve.
Metro has partners with the community on their vehicles. That's their slogan. And I don't see very many partnerships or any communities that even willingly want that partnership. I like the term you used, occupying force, because that's what these saturation teams are. When there's that many police units in such a small area, and it's only for a certain amount of time, so they're really not effective. They'll be there, then they leave, and as soon as they leave, criminals that may live in that area see that they're gone now, so then they go back to committing the crimes.
Yeah.
They know as soon as they leave, okay, now we can go out.
Well, that's the other thing is,
do.
Anybody who's a criminal who sees the cops running around, they're going to either go in their house and stay there, or they're going to leave, and then it's the citizens who are actually doing legitimate stuff that have to deal with these cops.
Right. Now, after the cops bust my balls for no reason and stop me, now they're going to, why won't you cooperate with us? Later on, I'm like, well, there's criminals here, you chase them away, while you're here harassing innocent people, and then you turn to me and ask me, well, why won't you cooperate with us? Why are you angry that we do this? It's silly. They create the, antagonistic, thing there, where it's us against them and them against us. Instead of doing the right thing, they wind up always on the wrong side of these issues.
And statistically speaking, it's been proven that it doesn't work. It doesn't reduce crime. Maybe for the hour or 2 or 3 that they're in the area, but overall crime trends don't decrease because of saturation teams.
Yeah, and that's why people shouldn't cooperate with them, because they're playing the percentages, like I said, and they're trying to catch a small group of people by harassing a bunch of people. So you should not consent to searches. You should not talk to them when unless they can produce some reason why you've been detained.
And you shouldn't talk to them either after that.
But that just makes it, you shouldn't talk to them, but, you shouldn't even stay. You should leave.
Right, if you have the option.
But, you should make it more difficult and make those percentages lower so it's not worthwhile for them to do it, is what it really amounts to. And there was a case, and this kind of got lost in the October 1st thing, because it was supposed to be... it was supposed to go before the Las Vegas City Council, I think, either that or the county commissioners, but they had a neighborhood that was up by Hollywood and I believe Lake Mead. They were considering, they had 3 entrances into the neighborhood, and they were considering walling off 2 of the entrances, so there was only 1 entrance for them to go in and out of. And the reason they wanted to do that is they claimed it was a high crime area and people were coming in from outside of the neighborhood. But so they were going to basically sit and profile at that 1 entrance. And like I said...
So they're creating a checkpoint.
Yeah, but like I said, they were supposed to have a hearing on that like October 2nd, I think. And then it got lost in the shooting. And I don't know if that ever came back up or if they approved it, or I haven't heard anything about it. But that's the kind of thing that they're doing, is pretty soon they're going to create these ghettos where people... have one way in and one way out, and you have to deal with the police. If they don't like the looks of you, or they deem you as somebody that doesn't belong in the neighborhood, then they're going to stop and harass you. And that's something where they sneak that in and they use that the crime thing, but then they expand it, and they're gonna expand it into any neighborhood they deem as a high crime area. And pretty soon, like I said, you're going to have these ghettos, and that's what they did in Nazi Germany, is they walled off neighborhoods and they walled off communities, and
right,
and you can say that's like an extreme comparison, but it's a comparison of degrees. It's Nazi Germany actually was way worse than we are at this point,
but they didn't start there.
Yeah, right. So it's a matter of degrees. It's not a matter of real differences. It's the same basic situation. It's just that it was way worse back then.
And you have to also remember, you said, high crime areas. the police are known for fabricating and exaggerating. There was a lot of talk at one point about, there's a war against police, and we're such a dangerous job, and they keep pushing this narrative, and people are starting, some people believe it, but we know it's not true. The numbers don't bear it out. It's not a very dangerous job.
Mm-hmm. I heard something that more garbage men die.
Absolutely.
Well, the reality is there's been 5 cops murdered in the entire history of Metro. In fact, the entire history of Las Vegas. Since 1905, there's been 5 cops murdered.
Right. So it's a very small percentage, but this is the narrative they put out there. So when they start saying things like a high crime area, well, you're using the same way to figure out the numbers that you say that your job is dangerous. It can't be believed. It's false. It's a fictitious information that they're giving out there to spin this to placate people.
But also, one of the things I noticed during the video of the woman with the shovel, they have that black stripe thing that they put around their badge, and that used to be if a cop was murdered, then they for some designated time. I don't know what the official time was. I don't know if it was like a month or whatever. But so they used to do that, and then they'd take it off whenever. They just wear that all the time now.
Yeah, I noticed at that press conference that they gave with the woman with the shovel, the guy was wearing that. I'm like, what, did somebody die?
No, it's pushing a false narrative once again.
Trying to
it's propaganda.
Sympathy from the public. Yeah,
it's police propaganda
for sure. So we talked about I think it was the 6th officer involved shooting the woman with the shovel. So that's the 6th one this year, which I believe is up from last year. There's more fatalities this year than last year as well.
Yeah, last year there was 5 shootings, and I think there was 2 fatal at this point. And he mentions in the beginning, this is the 6th, and it's the 3rd non-fatal, which it's actually now the 4th fatal shooting since she died.
But we talked about it a little bit last week, but you weren't here, Kelly, so you've seen the video, the body cam footage. What did you make of it?
I didn't actually have the opportunity to watch it until this morning. And part of the thing is when like I was saying before, how they try to create that narrative. Like the title of the video is "Woman with a Shovel Confronts Officer."
Armed with the shovel. Yeah, right. They to use that word.
I mean, I know that's like you could turn around and say like you're nitpicking because the reality is the officer confronted her, and she was running around with a shovel and she hit people's cars, and she was supposedly chasing these 2 people. So you could say you could say there's no issue with the cop actually confronting her. Like she should have been confronted because she was having a mental health issue, and somebody should have like stepped in and said, hey, whatever. But the thing about it is you create that narrative where it's not an aggressive act by the police. You're saying this is an aggressive act by the citizens, and they consistently do that. So it's not just this case. It's like with the Junior Lopez shooting, he didn't confront them. He was not violent toward them. He was not aggressive toward them, but they still said he confronted them.
Right. This is police propaganda. Once again, you see how they spin.
Yeah.
The propaganda machine is running full tilt for the police department.
And the other thing is when they say she had a shovel, like especially here in Vegas because it never snows, so you think like it's one of those pointed shovels, and you're thinking it's got a big long handle on it. In reality, she had a broken shovel that was a snow shovel. It had no point on it.
It was like this long.
Like the handle that was on there was like maybe 2 feet long. So she would have had to really get close to the cop to use it on him. And she wasn't running at him. She wasn't even really. She was kind of walking around. She was, she sort of approached him, but she wasn't like charging toward him. And she really wasn't like, she didn't have the shovel up like she was going to hit him with it, or like she was going to try to like stab him with it or anything. She's just basically holding the shovel. And the thing is, he's got his gun out, and he has a taser available. He could hit her from a distance. He has a nightstick. He could bat her shovel away if she tried to come at him. She was like a small woman, so it's not, you could say that, he puts himself in danger, but that's what the cops always say they do. So at the end of the video, there's a some woman comes out toward the street, and then she turns and faces that woman, and she might have taken 2 or 3 steps, but she wasn't rushing at that woman either. So that woman wasn't in mortal danger.
No.
But at the end of the video, they zoom in on the woman to make sure she's there, and they use that as the justification. And the other thing is, he shot her 7 times. So, there's no way you need to shoot somebody 7 times.
Well, unless you intentionally want to murder them. Mm-hmm. I mean, that was in his head. I'm going to murder this woman. This woman's going to die today.
And of course, they don't show all 7 shots because it would have been too graphic.
People would have been sick.
Had they shown that excessive use of force, 7 shots to this 100-pound woman, the community is going to be like, why? Why would you shoot her 7 times? So they show the first shot and stop it immediately. Yeah. And then zoom in on that woman that's 20 feet away, and they're like, see, we saved this woman over here. She was going to charge her. They were 20 feet away.
And that woman could have walked away too. Yeah. I mean,
and then the officer fired 7 shots in her direction. So how are you protecting her if you're shooting 7 rounds in her direction?
And Metro cops are really notorious for missing. So they're not the best marksmen out there. They shoot and miss and hit people that are in the background and everything. And
well, he was a rookie cop. I mean, so who knows what his skill level was, but I would say it wasn't too good. I mean, if he was a marksman, he could have shot her in the leg.
And they basically they cut it off at the sound of him shooting. They don't show what happened when he hit her. If she went down on the first shot and he just kept shooting, which is what happened with Eric Scott. He fallen to the ground and they unloaded their guns on him.
Right, the other officers, yeah.
Mm-hmm. And so the other thing is, there was enough distance between them. If she didn't try to rush up on him, there was no reason he couldn't have just waited. There was a CIT team, which is a crisis intervention team, which is supposedly trained to deal with people that are having mental health issues.
Well, we went over this last week. We were told that every officer, this was by the police department themselves, every officer is trained, CIT trained.
But they also have a specific crisis intervention team that their job is to deal with people that are having mental health issues. So even if everybody's trained, you figure they're specially trained.
Right.
His supervisor was coming because that's part of their protocol is when they have an issue like that, they send the supervisor, and there were backup coming. So there was 5 to 6 cops that would have shown up shortly. And so all he really had to do was wait it out. There's no way she could have, overcame 6 different cops that had tasers and batons and all this other stuff. And
however, if you do that, then you don't get your tattoo.
Right.
If you wait and they de-escalate it and nobody gets shot, you don't get that notch.
And they're supposed to be trained in de-escalation. And from watching that video, I didn't see any of that. He gets on scene. First thing he does is goes for his lethal weapon instead of the non-lethal. Slowly walking towards her. I mean, he went to her more than she came to him. She took maybe 1 or 2 steps towards him and then backed up again. But he's slowly coming towards her. Man, put down the shovel, but then starts yelling, put down the shovel. And so yelling at somebody who's having a mental health episode with a gun pointed at them is not my idea of de-escalating a situation.
And you got to remember, this isn't the first time this woman has been in crisis. Mm-hmm. She was known to the community. She was known to the police. They've been out there 20 times, and nobody in those other 20 deemed it necessary to unload on her with 7 shots.
Yeah, the CIT team dealt with her 2 days prior, so they know how to deal with this woman, obviously.
And they knew she wasn't a threat.
Yeah, but then here comes this guy first on scene and kills her within a minute of being there. Fires 7 shots at her.
And the thing is, I mean, I've heard this before. There's been other cases. I mean, this is becoming the routine, man. Within a minute of arriving on a scene, somebody winds up dead.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, I mean, there's been where basically the cop got out of the car and just shot.
Yeah, and that's not acceptable.
And then after shooting her, he doesn't do anything. Backup arrives, and one of the other officers who arrived sees her on the ground bleeding out, and he tries to apply a tourniquet. And so they had charged her with assaulting a police officer because they say she tried to bite him while he was putting a tourniquet on. Like, somebody who's been shot 7 times and he's trying to put on a tourniquet. I don't believe it at all. And then they said that it didn't break the skin. So just take our word for it. There's no physical evidence that this happened, but we had to charge her with something, so Let's
And
just
it was
say
so harmful.
Right,
You know,
and
they-
she was in
she
mental
bit him.
distress anyway. I mean, you don't expect her to behave, passively if she was already,
She
in
was
mental
shot
distress.
7 times.
Yeah, I'm not sure what I would do if I was laying out there. I mean, especially in recent cases, a cop approaches me after I'm thinking this is it. They're coming to finish the job.
Mhm.
If the bullets didn't get me, there's chokeholds that they use to make sure that they dispatch people quickly.
Hmm.
So
Yeah.
something to think about.
At the Venetian in the parking garage.
Yeah.
So it's not that it's unknown that police officers, don't try to just exterminate people. They go out of their way, it seems, to make sure that extermination of anybody they deem as a threat or they don't like is becoming common practice.
And during that press conference, they actually state that he was trying to de-escalate the situation. And I didn't see any kind of de-escalation. I mean,
No.
he's barking out commands, and he's not like acting kind of sympathetic. It's not like in the movies where you see him like, hey, like they're trying to talk people down. He's just like, I'm gonna shoot you if you come near me.
They ramps it up.
Yeah.
So there were a few viral videos over the last few days involving police, acting excessively. We shared a few of those on this page, so we're
Yep.
going to talk about those now. If you haven't seen those videos and wondering what we're talking about, they're on the page, so yeah, check it out. The first one, let's see, what was the first one we posted?
Probably the one from San Antonio.
Oh, yeah.
People filming.
So there were a couple individuals filming the San Antonio Police Department.
Independent news, again,
Yeah.
I believe they were.
Like we do all the time, and they're, not being confrontational or anything. They ask them, where would you like us to stand? They're actually,
Trying to comply.
where would you, so that we're not in the way, we don't want to get charged with obstruction or some ridiculous charge like that. So where would you like us to stand? One officer tells them, stand back behind this line, and the two gentlemen immediately follow his instruction, go behind the line, and then one of the officers just charges him and just lays a whooping on him right there just for filming the police. The other guy couldn't believe it. He's like, oh, I'm getting this on camera, and it's something we've seen a million times, that unprovoked, just they don't like being filmed, which is
Right.
your constitutional right, your First Amendment right to film.
Yeah, it keeps us safe. And actually, I mean, the videos are videos, so, they don't lie. So if they were acting inappropriately, that would have been on camera too. It protects the police and it protects civilians.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, the cops had that phobia of being filmed, and the funny thing is they think everybody else does too, because one of their first things to do is to start filming you
And remind you of it. You're being filmed also. I'm like, okay.
or they start taking pictures with their camera, like that guy at Circle Park. When they were,
Yeah, that's what I do.
But,
I'm happy with being filmed.
but that's the thing. I'm like, I post my shit on YouTube all the time. I don't give a fuck if you film me.
Yeah, exactly.
But they just. I don't even like. As far as I saw, the guy stepped back and then the cop just charged on him. I didn't see any kind of even interaction between them. So it's just one of those things where the cops just hate being filmed and they're just gonna.
Well,
go after it.
yeah, and there's always one, guy. I mean, you went through the same situation. The other officers were, get back, and then when they friggin' tackled you into the street after trying to comply, and
I mean, part of that, my theory is, the reason I started filming is because I saw, the way the woman was yelling, get your hands off me, and then they were converging on her, and I thought they might start like beating her. And my theory is maybe that cop thought the same thing, and even though he knows you're allowed to film, he figured like the bigger issue is he doesn't want me filming them beating a woman on
Right.
Fremont Street. So, he's like, which one is worse,
Yeah, I'll take my chances, protect my brothers,
But that's basically what happened is, like I said, if you watch that video, there's two people standing next to me on the curb, and the only difference between me and them is I have a camera.
Right.
Mm-hmm. And a lot of the filming, the deal with filming is you want to hopefully be a deterrent. I mean, maybe if they see that they're being filmed, that they're going to act appropriately, right, and not do something outlandish because they know that there's going to be a video record of it. Yeah, so that's part of the hopes of filming, is that the officers will see you filming and will act appropriately. But
yeah, well, that's why when I film,
lately.
yeah, that's why when I film, I make sure they know I'm filming.
Mm-hmm.
I want them to know I'm filming, and that's why you go out with your cop block shirt, because then they know that you're out there and you're watching them, and you want it to be posted. Yeah, yep. I mean, you want it to be a deterrent, but it isn't always.
No, sometimes these
Sometimes
cops that come unhinged, yeah, it could be a trigger. Yeah. The other video was New Jersey Beach. A woman had unopened beer cans.
And she was underage.
She was, she was a couple months before turning 21. So
right.
That was her horrible, dangerous crime.
Yeah, non-victim.
And meanwhile,
victimless crime.
If you watch the video, she has a child with her that's on the beach, and while the cops are beating her, they almost stomp the child. So
yeah,
see how safe the cops are making it. Some woman was drinking a couple beers on the beach, and her
couldn't just write her a ticket,
And she's
why write a ticket when you could do a beat down?
Yeah. And those three cops couldn't control that small woman, who they should have really not even been fucking with in the first place. But if you want to try and say, okay, she deserves to be arrested for drinking a couple months early, which I know nobody else has ever done that. It's not something that people started
right
doing.
Nobody drinks a few months shy. Nobody drinks on the beach.
Yeah, I didn't go to parties when I was 15 in high school, and drank. But they're supposedly enforcing these crimes because it's a safety issue, but then on top of that, they're running around beating a woman,
use violence against the defenseless woman,
an underage girl,
almost stepping on a child,
yeah,
and disturbing everybody who's on the beach, because the person who took the video was somebody who was peacefully sleeping on the beach and then woke up and saw all this going on.
Yeah, and he just wails on her head. I mean, a few times. I didn't count how many times, but it was just brutal. Unbelievable.
It was brutal. We also had, was there one more that we did?
Yeah, there's another video we posted. Do you want to talk about the lawsuit of there was a 15-year-old riding a bike in a shopping mall.
Oh, yeah. They settled the case for $500,000 for the two kids.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. Which the citizens are paying for, not the cops.
Right. And the cop, went to trial. The jury said, absolutely these kids did nothing, which is why they got the settlement. And that police officer's still on the force, and there was no response from the department as to why this guy who chooses to tase little kids riding bicycles in the mall.
Yeah, and beating a small fucking teenage girl.
Yeah.
Which,
that was
if you're not a cop, that makes you a horrible scumbag.
Right.
In the eyes of of everybody.
Yeah.
In reality, you're still a horrible scumbag, but people want to give cops a pass when they beat children.
No, it's domestic violence among police officers is 2 to 4 times that of the general population. So it's in their nature.
That's the ones that get reported, not the ones they cover up. So it's probably 5 to 7 times. Really.
Yeah, I'd think it's a lot worse just because the victims don't want to speak out because they're, fear of retaliation. You're going to the police to say that the police are beating me.
Right, and the police do cover up. I remember hearing a story about Lombardo, and where the police were sent to his house, and all of a sudden that all got erased.
And Gillespie before him.
Or Gillespie, was it?
Yeah.
Well, it's all of them.
Yeah. I mean, it's hard to keep track.
There is spokesperson. I don't remember the fucking guy's name, but the guy who goes on Fox 5 all the time has a history of domestic violence. And the other thing is, when you're convicted of domestic violence, if you're not a cop, they take away your rights to have a gun.
Right.
That's one of those things. It's considered a crime where you lose your right to have guns. But if you're a cop, first of all, they give you some kind of plea deal that negates that. But on top of that, you're still working as a cop. You're still out there walking around with a gun and
going home and beating your wife and kids.
Yeah. I remember
as long as you make it home to beat your wife and kids at the end of the day, everything's good.
I remember there was one case. Remember that month? I forget which month it was. I think it was the end of last year. But in 1 month, there were 2 or 3 Metro officer involved SWAT situations.
Yeah.
Where SWAT was used against their own officers when they were off duty, and one of those, the cops involved in one of those had a history of domestic violence. So like, had he been a normal citizen, he wouldn't even have been able to carry a firearm.
Well, and the cop that they arrested, finally, like 20-something years, I think it was 27 years later, for murder, the reason that they had his DNA was because he had been convicted of domestic violence before that. And they also had his gun. I don't even think they actually intended to arrest him. I think that was one of those things where they had all those rape kits that were sitting back there. I think there's 1,200 in Las Vegas that are untested and have been sitting. And they got some kind of grant from New York to start testing them, and they just sent some out, and his was among that group. So it
who
wasn't
knows,
even,
if they were on top of things, who knows how much sooner they could have caught this guy.
yeah, like a month after it happened.
Yeah, they had numerous chances.
He was a suspect. They originally called him a suspect, and then they basically just let it go.
Yeah, I just recently saw the most recent development in that case. He's not getting the death penalty for rape, murder. Yeah, big surprise. There was another viral video. I'm not sure if we posted it, but it was it in New York? The motorcycle.
Oh, like
a guy was riding his motorcycle, and I don't know if it was some kind of motorcycle like event, but there was a lot of people on motorcycles, and the cop used his patrol vehicle to knock this guy off of his bike, and then tried to arrest him and all the other guys on the bikes.
Yeah,
well, if you watch that full video, part of it is they're on the highway, and there's I think there's 300 of them all together, and it was just a motorcycle ride, and they say the cop for some reason just singled out this one cyclist and started chasing him, and he took off, and then it went from the freeway onto the surface street, and all the people that were in that ride had stopped, and they passed them, and then they saw the cop run into him as he was riding and knock him off his bike.
Right. I mean that was. I mean, you can die when you're in a car and you hit a motorcyclist. And this was. There wasn't. I didn't know if there was any charges against the guy, but if they were riding from what it seems, it would have been some sort of traffic infraction.
Mm-hmm.
So
citable offense.
Right. So this guy was targeted for murder for a traffic violation.
Mm-hmm.
They're running into him with a police car while you're driving, intentionally doing that.
Mm-hmm. And this isn't
is
the only
crazy.
case. There was what about that guy? Another traffic citation. He had no rear plates, no front plates. I don't know if he had a driver's license or what, but they surrounded him, smashed out the driver's side and passenger side windows. The canine jumped into the vehicle, mauled this dude. They pull him out of the vehicle. That just let this animal go to town on him. All for not having a license plate.
Right, and he was he wasn't cooperating with the police. He wasn't being aggressive in any way.
Mm-hmm.
He was like, "Why are you doing this?" and asking questions.
Yeah. He was ordered out of the vehicle, which he didn't comply with. But is that a sentence to get mauled by a canine?
Exactly. I mean, and especially if you have a little bit of fear from exiting the vehicle.
Mm-hmm. Just write me my ticket. Let me go on my way.
Yeah. Or, I mean, having a little bit of patience instead of pushing all the time. I mean, but it's that act of defiance by a person that enrages them.
Mm-hmm.
They really believe that they are above us and that we should kowtow and crawl every time they stop us or look at us or ask us a question. And when you don't, man, they go batshit on you. Sticking a dog. Because a guy, and if you watch the video, calm, collected, this is what I believe, I don't believe I want to do this, asking questions.
Mm-hmm.
It was a very peaceful encounter until the police escalated. And escalated in such a friggin' horrible way. Those dogs do massive amounts of damage.
Oh yeah, this guy was screaming in agony. It was hard to listen to.
It was
let
hard.
alone watch, yeah. But just seeing these, militarized looking police smashing out a citizen's windows, so vandalizing his vehicle, sicking a German Shepherd on him and then hauling him off to a cage. It just, you can't help but make the correlation to Nazi Germany. It was just unbelievable. It looked like, the SS or Gestapo or something right here in America. But I would think, write the guy a ticket. I mean, even if you want to impound his vehicle or something, you know what I mean? Make him walk home. I don't know. But sick the dog on him, it's just unnecessary. And then I read the comments section, and it's like all these bootlickers like, well, he should have complied. Well, like as if that is a perfect penalty for not having a license plate. That's what needs to happen.
Beyond that, it's not the cops' job to penalize people.
Right.
It's their job to investigate crimes and to arrest somebody that they believe committed a crime. It's not their job to execute a penalty upon them and punish them.
Right. They're not judge, jury, and executioner.
Well, they are.
Well,
in a lot of cases.
Well, they behave that way, but that's not their mandate.
Exactly. Yeah.
Mm-hmm. So where are we at time?
Hey, you know what?
About 50 minutes.
50?
Yeah,
What?
50.
Oh.
Because it's at 54, but I'm trying to remember.
Oh, we're at 50. We don't have 50 left.
I let it play for a while.
All right. Listen, I do.
Something else to do. If you guys want to go another hour, I don't care.
Yes.
As long as you pay.
Well, yeah, of course.
Right. Listen, if you notice, our backdrop's a little different today. There was an artist from Jordan who came in and did this piece. How do you pronounce his name? Ahmad.
You want to talk about it?
Yeah, could you give us a little? This is a beautiful picture. If we can do it, and we appreciate being able to use it as our backdrop. It's a pretty powerful piece.
Actually, Ahmad's a really cool guy. He raises 2 daughters here in America just to give them a better chance, but his family owns several thousand acres of farmland up in the hills in Jordan. And so he's going to head back there now that both his daughters have graduated high school, and he's kind of done his job. But this piece represents him leaving all his baggage behind and going through what he sees to be his new life. And I'm not sure. He didn't explain that about is that coming to the United States, or is that going home, or he didn't really talk about that. Just those 4 circles up there kind of represent his new life, and all those boxes are his old life. And that's him cutting the barbed wire and walking through it.
Nice.
Yeah, I really like this piece.
There's a lot of great local artwork here at the Happy Earth Market. So if you haven't been down here, definitely come check it out. It's a really cool place. They have all kinds of great events that they do. Follow them on Facebook, Instagram, all social media, just to get an idea of what they got going on. If something sounds like something you'd be into, yoga, meditation, all kinds of cool stuff, check it out, man. They're a great organization. They support us. We support them. They've got some great podcasts that they do as well. If you want to, if you like what we do and you think would like to do a show similar or your own thing, talk to these guys. They can help you create that content.
And that would be Hemp Podcast, right?
Yeah.
Right.
Hemp Podcast.
Yeah. It's one big word.
Yeah.
One big.
It's like Happy Earth Market Podcast.
You'll be looking for half the day trying to find it if you make it 2 words like I did.
We've had two people in the political realm be like, yeah, we'll do the show. No, we won't. Because of the name, they don't want me to.
It's Happy Earth Market Podcast, so it's...
Right, but we don't...
Oh, they can't get over the acronym. I mean, it was a coincidence.
Hemp is so evil.
Well, and the other thing is, I'm sure you're not even considered that when you were, creating the show. That, that was quite a coincidence. Like, oh my goodness, look at that.
It was actually just luck of the draw. It was quite awesome.
It is. Really, really is.
Yeah. So proving again that politicians are liars.
Yeah. Well, not just politicians, because like when we did the Grow Your Own Festival, we had a whole show with the Grow Your people that are putting it on, and their big promotion team refused to promote it after they saw the name of the show.
Wow.
What?
Well, you wouldn't want to promote hemp because that's not
on a hemp program.
I mean,
they said no way, yeah, and so
it's not a demographic.
It's a huge promotion team here in the valley that does that refuse us. That was supposed to be like our leap into it.
Yeah.
Yeah, but we're not going to call them sellouts. We're just going to.
Right.
But yeah, we broadcast live here every Tuesday in front of a live studio audience. We're presented by Nevada Cop Block and Food Not Bombs. check us out at nvcopblock.org and foodnotbombslasvegas.org. We're on all social media. If you haven't seen our past shows, check it out. We've got a few of them on Libsyn and YouTube. Going to be on iTunes soon. So, yeah. You can find
And
us
we're
anywhere.
growing and growing.
Yeah.
And obviously, we're on ACAB Radio on Facebook. It's should be like Facebook/ACAB Radio.
Yes.
So it's hard
Right.
to find and it's hard to
Yeah,
remember.
how come I'm
but-
not seeing all the little hearts and stuff as people watch us and love us?
Yeah.
I mean, I expect to start seeing that.
Because they're anarchists, man.
Yeah, we need more love.
Yeah.
We're fucking suffering over here.
All right. Well, is that it, guys?
Yeah, I think we came to our time. Thank
All
you
right.
all for listening, and see us
Yes.
again next week.
Adios. Muchos gracias.